That being said, I would say if you have the ability to look at a use of force class or something along those lines, I learned a lot when I took that class. It was like an hour long or something like that. It might have been 2 hours. But it was very useful information because at least here in Jersey, they basically said like you can match whatever your opponent's doing. So
That's pretty much, yeah.
yeah, it's pretty much it should be that everywhere as far as I know, but it was just interesting to really get it like this is what the law says, and it was a guy who understood the law teaching the class. But he basically said like if they pull a knife, that's use of deadly force. If they don't do that, then you can pretty much do what you have to do up to the point, and I forget what the name of the standard is, but it's basically like what would someone in your position, knowing the facts you know and having the skill level that you have done in that situation, and then that's kind of how they look at it. So it's a very interesting class, but then it kind of leads off of like, and it was very much like if you're being attacked, you take care of the attacker and then you stop. And it was like kind of as simple as that.
That's pretty much what it is. If you neutralize your attacker and that they cannot harm you, then you're good. Now, where you step over the line is you neutralize your attacker and you still keep
exactly
committing violence, or you take a weapon away and you use the weapon on them, because now they're not the threat unless they keep coming at you. Then that's a different story. But that's where it is. It's a common sense thing. But here's the thing: if you don't train to be calm in the chaos, and I use that all the time because that's a very popular phrase. If you are running on adrenaline, you're running on anger, and you're not thinking, and you're a bit irrational, then you're not in control.
Right.
And then that's where you put yourself in further danger.
Exactly.
Either from a legal standpoint or something else. I learned that lesson as well, just growing up as a kid. I'm a Jersey guy, South Jersey. Kids like to fight. I mean, back in the day, in the 70s, early 80s, we fought. I mean, we shook hands, we went the other way. So, but, I remember like being so mad at something or somebody. And basically they were smart and they left. They were like, they just ran away. But I was just so, I just want to hit something. And I wasn't controlling myself. And I put myself in a bad position. So, and then some other guy stepped up and like, I'll fight you. And he was probably seeing like, this guy's mad.
Yeah, he's going
to make mistakes.
Yep.
He's going to be all flurried out, and, and I went, and I kept getting my nose pounded on, on that particular fight. And, it turned out to be cool. It's like, okay, man, you've had enough. I don't want to, keep hurting you. And I, walked home, that was it. But should have never been in the fight in the first place.
Sure. From what we were.
What's the best fight?
Far.
No fight. Because nobody gets hurt.
What's like your, I don't even, I guess, know where to really get, like, what would be your preferred, and that's kind of like a weird question, like, what's your preferred strike, what's your preferred strategy? But
that's a good question, and I get asked by students all the time, and you have to tell them, it's like you can have a game plan, but just like Mike Tyson says, once you get punched in the mouth, everybody's got a game plan until they get punched in the mouth, and then it goes out the window. But if you train all the time, you start seeing these openings, you start seeing these targets. Now, I want to take the quickest path to victory on the self-defense application, of course. So what's going to slow you down? If you can't see me, first of all, if I punch you in the face, I punch you in the eye, you can't see, that's not always going to be instantaneous.
Now, when you say punch in the face, would you typically do closed fist punch, or are you like an open palm strike to the face or something along that? Again,
I mean, it just depends on what comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like
I know I'm trying to get like nitty gritty a little bit.
No, and that's the thing, and that's why I started this conversation with different hand strikes and targets. I mean, open hand palm strikes are great, but the thing is, you have a limited range of motion.
Right.
And then what happens you can only pull your fingers back so far to get that strike. But I mean, I train and striking with the palm and ripping and tearing and all those other things. But if you punch, if you just punch from your arm and then you use your hip and twist and then extend that shoulder, how much more range are you going to get? So that's the biggest thing, is keeping them away to a point where you could continue to follow up, or maybe you hit them and go where you could follow up with something else. You don't want to get them too far away. It depends on your game and your body style. So that's another thing too. If you're long and lengthy, you don't want them coming in on you because it negates your strikes to some degree. You have to go to in tight strikes, which is knees, elbows,
which looks
so on and
way
so forth.
worse on the like. That's, I mean, not for nothing, but that's like when you start throwing that, people would be like, "Oh, like what are you throwing those for? You don't need to throw it." But I mean, again, another topic for conversation. But I love knees and elbows.
I mean, that's a different thing. Some styles of fighting, you're going to be going in. Like, I'm going to go in. I'm going to overpower you, even if you're taller than me. If you're not as muscular or built as I am, I'm going to impose on you. Because if you're tall and I take away, that's your biggest asset, is your length to keep me out there. So I have to find a way in to create the damage. So that's just my philosophy, being a shorter, stockier guy.
Sure.
If I was a big 6 foot brute with huge hands, like some other people that we know, I would keep you away.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. Have you ever, and this might be slightly off topic, but have you ever like sat down and tried to draw up I've always heard referred to as like a fighting triangle, or like a weapons triangle, where you'd have like the distinct types. So you'd have like tall person, muscular, and whatever, and then tried to figure out, like, if you're tall, obviously, like you said, if you're tall, you want to be inside and close. If you're tall and they're shorter, you want to range them out. If they're muscular, like, what is like the optimal fighting style against each structure, as like just a game plan, more mechanism, which I think I've went over a lot. But because I mean, and I guess tying this back into striking, like, for example, if you're going up against the guy who has a lot of fat on him, your strikes aren't going to affect him the same way as someone who's skinnier, where you can just get right in on the bone or something like that. So I guess
these are good questions.
Yeah.
These are very good questions. So I part of that comes from the Temple of Truth, which is basically just sparring.
Yeah.
When you're sparring, it's not a true representation. It's a simulation of a fight. Because, a fight's going to be more chaotic. It's going to be, there's going to be more emotions involved. You're going to have somebody that's a lot more emotional than somebody else, and they're going to burn out because they're not used to fighting.
Yeah.
I think people that know how to fight really don't want to fight.
Yeah, I literally just thinking that when you said that. Yeah.
It gets to the point where, because when you train, the type of damage you could do to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're training a specific technique and targeting a specific part of the body, and like I said earlier in this conversation, and you're going light and you're accurate and you're right on that spot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we kind of got away from a lot of that in the modern day martial arts, where traditional martial arts, you had to study the art of destroying the body.
Yeah.
But you also just studied the art of healing the body.
Mm-hmm.
Healing yourself, and I think that you develop a certain amount of respect.
Absolutely. I even know, like, a bunch of guys I hang out with from the gym, like, yeah, we can all fight, but no one really, like you said, no one wants to, just because it's not a hassle, but it's just like, that's a lot of effort to put out there, and I've like, serious things can happen. So, not to say it's not fun to fight, but going off of that, like, if you ever, and one of the ones I always tell people, they're like, oh, well, like, does it hurt to get, I'm like, ask someone to kick you in the leg like 3 times. Doesn't have to be super hard, but just get kicked in the leg a couple of times, and then you'll really know what's going on, because that hurts bad. If you get shit on,
if you equate it to somebody that bumps their shin on the coffee table,
sure,
you know exactly what that feeling is. Well, that's exactly what you're going to feel. And depending upon how you're conditioned, some people don't have the conditioning to take those hits. When you train, you condition to take those hits. It's like I had a conversation with a police officer at one point about taser. So there people that train have a different response to that. You know, when you train, especially in grappling and sometimes in the striking arts, you learn to take a hit and roll it off your back. You take it and you don't worry about it. All right, I took that, you know, because maybe that's going to open up some doors for you. I took your hit. Oh, thanks, because now you're right where I want you to be. You know, and it depended upon your footwork and other things and how much of that hit you're really going to absorb, but it sets you up for something. But you suck it up. So it's the same thing. If you get hit with a taser, you train, you know, you're still going to be affected. I'm not saying you're not, but you're going to fight it a little bit more. They're going to have to give you a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's like the hangover. Sometimes we got to give them a little bit more. But also somebody on drugs, because their perception, their body is whacked out.
Right.
And they're not getting the same signals to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that you could hit them with a taser and they might not even feel it at first.
Yeah. You would be surprised both ways. You'd be surprised if you got in a fight with someone that has zero experience, how you just feel like you can just impose your will on them. If you train to be like if you throw a strike and they have never been hit that hard in their life, they're going to quiver down real quick. So you're like, oh, that's surprising. But it also works the other way where, hey, I know how devastating these hits can be, and I just hit that dude and he didn't even flinch. Not because he's trained, but he looks like he's on drugs. So now I have to reevaluate my entire plan. Obviously, there's still like hard set fast mechanics. Like if you cave a dude's knee in, it's gonna, whether he feels it or not and reacts, his body is not gonna move the same way after something like that. So there's stuff like that, but you know, in general,
I agree with you on that part. I mean, but you can get some of these people that are on some major hallucinogenics or drugs, and you could break every bone in their body. They'll keep coming at you.
Oh yeah,
and they're gonna die,
right?
Or they're gonna just crumple somewhere.
Yeah,
you know, but it's gonna be after the fact because their body's like not telling them that it's broken. You know, unless the limb just, you can't stand on it. But I mean, you would really have to do some serious damage on a leg or break the serious bone on a leg or something for them not to be able to stand on it. Because you could break one. You have a few bones in your leg. You have your tibia, I think, is the smaller one.
Yeah, I think
tibia. And you could break that, and you can still walk around.
Right, the fibia. I think
the fibia is
the weight bearing one. Yeah, and then obviously the big one up in the thigh, whatever that one's called. I can't remember right now. The femur. That's the one. I mean, you're not gonna.
No, you're not gonna.
I would be astonished if someone could break someone's femur with like a kick or something. Obviously, if you have like a baseball bat, but like if. You know, that's a very, very thick bone. I think that and the pelvis are the two hardest bones in the body to break. And usually you see that in car accidents and football. But yeah, I mean, that's just something to keep in mind if you are, and that's, I guess, where your training comes in of like elevation of strikes. Like if some Joe Schmo's just being very obnoxious, like pushing you, shoving you, and you just crack him one and he backs off, you go, all right, you know, no harm, no foul. Like
then that's that. Yeah.
And then you gotta, the next strike, and then eventually you get to the point where you're like, all right, well, I'm going to start going for things that is going to permanently injure you, like eyes, you know, going for the throat, going for stuff that like it's you. And that's kind of what the use of force class taught me a little bit, is they said, and this is going off of the assumption that the attacker is attacking you and you have to respond, right? Obviously not you going after someone for just like they flip you off so you run them down and go beat them up. Not that, but
no. This is for when you're engaged. So and also too, and I know that it's important, and I know that I've studied a lot of different arts, and not all of them taught it this way, is body manipulation. So if there's a target that's open, or if there's a target that I want to be open, then I will hit the body in a certain way to open up another target. Now, of course, if I crack you in the throat, not necessarily going to kill you, depending upon the amount of force that I put into that strike or how that strike lands. But if you have to stop because you can't breathe correctly.
Yeah.
People freak out when they can't breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even just like smothering their like if you get them on the ground and just covering their mouth and nose to the point, not so they can bite you, but like if you just they lose it. It's kind of funny.
And then what happens with white belts and BJJ? Because they don't know what it's like. Man, I got this guy's weight on me. Maybe their chest is in my face, or they don't know how to breathe. They don't know how to relax. It freaks them out. If you grab somebody by the throat, they don't know what to do because it's just like
if you train,
it's like so much of personal space that they like lose it.
Yeah, it's just like, wow, I'm losing control here. I can't control my breath.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, well, because I'm gonna make you comply.
Right.
So if I hit you on the nose once, some people they're gonna go, oh, okay,
This guy knows.
I'm gonna leave you alone. Whether you know what you're doing or not, I'm gonna leave you alone. I really don't want to get hit again. If then you have those other psychos.
I would be one of them. Let's be real.
Yes, or there's warrior type of people that you get hit in the nose or the mouth, and you're like, oh yeah. The switch goes on, and it's like, you just hit me.
Yeah.
Now it's my turn.
That's what I tell people, like joking around. But at work, everyone's like a lot of people will have this like, oh, who's stronger? Who's it? Like just joking around. And I never really take part in those conversations because they're dumb, but they're like, yeah, like if I just came up and just punched you right in the face, what would you do? I was like, well, you better hope you knock me out because I'm coming after you. Like,
yeah, because if I get up, like, you're done. If you knock me down,
yeah.
And there's some people that mechanically, even if you will get hit hard, and you will be with a skilled person, and they hit you hard, and you'll get hit and you won't go down.
Yeah. That's something else you learn from, at least I did. You start squaring up with people and sparring and stuff, and you get cracked pretty hard, and you're like, you just keep going. Like you think it would do a lot more to you, but since you've been hit 100 times already and you kind of know how it feels, you're just like, oh, all right. Like,
But also too, you're not just standing straight up and taking that hit. Like, you're moving.
Right.
So when you're moving, the more you move out of that way of the path of that strike, or the sooner that you shut down the arc of that strike or whatever, then you're taking power off that strike. So, and also too, you got to remember is that if you're a short person and you're fighting a taller person, you don't want to be punching up.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of power there.
Because you're losing power. The more angle you have to go up. Now there are strikes that you can come up, but why do that? When your center of power is lower to the ground and your hips, that's where you want to base a lot of that power. So if they're taller than you are, you want to take advantage of those particular targets. Now, I'm not sure on the height difference between these two classic fighters. But you have Muhammad Ali and you have Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier was just a beast. Muhammad Ali was a great fighter. I'm not, and I think he's a decent motivator until you start learning more about how he treated other people. And then it kind of, for me, it dulls his whatever. But that's another conversation. But Frazier went out and he would just land these strikes. He was just hitting Ali in the hips all the time. What happens is that you keep getting those hits to the muscles and all that stuff. Your body starts to dehydrate and you can't move. And in one of their classic fights that Frazier's corner wants to throw in the towel, and Frazier's like, no way, man. I'm going to go out. We're going. And Ali, on the other end, wanted to throw in the towel. Like, I can't go out there anymore. This guy's beating me. And his corner said, no way. So I think Frazier's team threw the towel in, and Ali's walking across the ring, to get the decision, and he falls down because Frazier had beat the crap out of his hip so bad, and those low body strikes, he could not walk.
That's so just for context, because now I'm curious. So it looks like Joe Frazier was 5'11 and Muhammad Ali was 6'3. So
I mean, that's kind of nominal in a way,
yeah,
but still, he used that lower body,
to get
lower
on
center
those
of gravity
yeah.
to get into that body strikes, and that stuff will wear you down.
That says
You don't always have to go for the head strike.
I think this probably would be an interesting place to stop and have a jumping off point for the next part of this series. But yeah, like just as simple as head versus body. I hate getting hit in the body. It is not. It's a little bit more of a more sustained. Like in the head, it's like a jolt, like you're getting rocked. But in the body, it's like, I felt that one again. Okay, like it just kind of wears on you a lot more. Like the head is just you get hit and you kind of don't feel it. The body, like you get hit in the right spot and you're like, oh, that hurts. And then I mean, not to mention like the liver, you get hit in the liver hard enough, you got about 2 seconds before you fall over.
Well, yeah, there are. Everybody talks about the headshots, and I think that most of the people in the world are going after your head. Okay, but I've dropped people with thrust punches to the solar plexus. Where they just crumpled.
Yep.
Because they can't breathe. Because if that's the right timing on that, you can't suck air in or out. Right.
Right. Yeah, you upset that timing.
Yeah, ribs suck, but you're probably going to feel them the next day unless you break it.
Yeah,
because then you're you can't move.
Kind of what ribs are designed for, is to protect all those vital organs in there.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean you get someone in the like that. I think it's called the hanging rib on the opposite side of the
floating rib.
The floating rib. Yeah, you get in there, and that's that's the smallest rib in the body, right? Is that why people go after that? Because you can break it easier. Is that the thinking behind that?
Yeah, I think it's isolated, and then the one that anyway we won't get into that.
Yeah.
But you get punched in the liver, the kidney,
and that's what you have to remember on this. Again, in the street frame of mind here, if you're getting hit in the like no one's gonna not hit you in the kidney if they have the opportunity. Like it's not like it's an illegal strike in the street, so getting hit in the kidney sucks.
Well, and if you think about boxing, that there's no kidney strikes, no liver shots. I mean, they take those things away because they know how brutal those shots are. So I still think that boxing, having some type of boxing background for the sheer training of boxing, and then the targeting and the power that you create and the abuse that you take, and then combine that with Eastern martial art with kicking and other things and targeting and other things of that nature, and a grappling, you're pretty much set.